This is Dr. Chalmers. Welcome to Wellness Insights with me, Dr. Chalmers. You guys keep asking me, what do I mean when I keep saying it's chemistry over calories? So first of all, the idea that, every human being with all of our diversity, everything short, tall, fat, thin, everything, everybody's metabolic system is exactly the same, is kind of a little bit silly. It's not really how it works. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go through a lot of the things that matter. It's a little bit more complex, but you guys should get kind of a gross understanding of what's going on. So whenever I look at somebody, we're trying to figure out how to get their body where it needs to be in metabolic function, that type of thing. The first thing I always start with is called somatotyping. So somatotyping is basically how your body handles sugars. There's an insulin functionality, so it is a little bit hormonal, but there's a little bit more than that to it. So somatotyping, remember, is a scale. It's a spectrum. It's not an A, B, or C thing. But so basically you have a couple different groups. You have ectomorphs, which those are the guys, and everybody knows these type of people, where they can eat whatever they want to. They never gain an ounce. Like, the person who can eat the large deep dish pizza with all the toppings and drink a case of beer and not gain an ounce the next day. Those guys, those are your ectomorphs. And it sounds awesome. And they're like, oh, I hate those guys. Yeah, well, those guys have a problem gaining weight. So they have their own problems. Then you got your mesomorphs, those are the guys in the middle. Their bodies burn fat and sugars pretty much evenly. And so those are the guys, if you cut their calories, they do really, really well. They lose fat. It's really easy to maintain muscle mass, just a little bit of amino acid function, a little bit of protein, and they're good. And then you have guys on the other end of the spectrum, which is where I live, called endomorphs. Our bodies really want to burn fat. If you give us sugar, if you give us carbohydrates, we will turn it into fat to hopefully burn later. So it's really hard, really easy for endomorphs to gain fat, really, really hard for us to lose fat. This is where keto lives and does really, really well. So that's the first kind of piece of it. Now, again, like I said, it's a spectrum. So you have your hard ectomorphs, which you got to give tons of sugar to, lots of tests to get them to gain any weight. And then you've got, your ectomesos, which are kind of in the middle of that, then your mesoectos, then your meso, then your mesoendo, your endomeso, and your endo. So like I said, it's a big spectrum. You kind of have to figure out where people are on it to really kind of hone this in, but it's not super difficult. So that's the first place you start is, what kind of macro set are we looking at? Are we looking at high fat? Are we looking at high carb? Are we looking at kind of an even distribution, of our macro sets, stuff like that? So that's the first place you start. So that's a part of the caloric thing, is, obviously where your macro set is at. Now, the other thing is hormones. So hormones are a little bit interesting, because it's not just the number on the blood sheet. So what you have to understand is that you have a couple different factors playing in with hormones. So first of all, you have the actual number. So let's play with testosterone, for example. So for a guy, you want to be at 1,000 on trough day, more or less, right? And so some people will have 700 on their testosterone scale and they feel amazing. And some people have 700 and they feel okay, but not great. Well, what you have to understand is that you have two parts for every hormone function. You have the amount of hormone you have, or the keys, and then you have the amount of receptor sites you have, or the locks. They have to come together and work together for a function to happen, right? So you can have a good level of hormone, but you can have either a low amount of receptors or a good amount of receptors with low functionality, so you get low result. Or you can have a lot of receptors that have high functionality, and so you get a little bit of hormone and this massive reaction inside the body. And so you kind of have to understand, one, what each hormone's job is, what it really does, how it affects the body, and then you can start kind of playing with the levels and be like, okay, at this level of hormone, I'm getting X level of reaction. Is that what we're looking to do? And so that's one of the big pieces that you have to kind of look at with hormones. But so we can kind of run through some of that. Testosterone is probably the most important hormone you're going to be able to add to the body to affect health, fat, muscle, ligament, brain, gut, all the good things. Testosterone is the healing hormone. It's the one that tells your body to go back and repair and regenerate and heal and increase metabolic function and restore all the things. And you guys know how I've made 55 videos about testosterone. So the other one is insulin. Insulin's job is to control a glucose-fed state. So what happens is that your body consumes food, turns it into sugar. The sugar goes in your blood, and then the insulin's job is to take it from the blood and push it into the tissues. So that's what insulin does, which is also why it's super easy to fix diabetes with ketosis, because you don't need insulin anymore if you're in ketosis. But anyway, so that's what insulin does. Insulin's very helpful. It's anabolic. It's a great thing to use. We've destroyed our insulin receptors with the amount of fake sugars we have. But again, that's another story. So insulin's a big player. And that's what you see when you talk about the glycemic index. When people are talking about complex carbs, when they're talking about, low GI, it's how much insulin response is this going to create in the body. That's more or less what we're talking about. So insulin's a big player. Estrogen is going to be a player for everybody. Estrogen is not a great hormone if you're not trying to have a baby. But especially in guys, it'll hold water on you. It'll make you puffy. It does stuff you really don't want to do. So checking your estrogens, getting those levels down is important. And there's a lot of xeno and phytoestrogens, BPAs, astrazine. There's all sorts of things that are out in the market that they're messing with you. So you got to check those. And some of those don't even show up on estrogen tests. So that one's a little bit screwy, but so estrogen's a player. And thyroid does make a play, but if you're worried about your thyroid levels, radically increase your iodine. That helps a lot. But so you have a hormonal function as well. You've got to make sure that you're checking that. But those are kind of the motion actually obviously helps, but those are kind of the big parameters. So you got your somatotyping and your hormones, and your macro set, which goes to somatotyping. So, if you're kind of lost in this whole, I don't understand why I'm still fat, or why I say things like, for instance, a lot of people outside the ectomorphs, a lot of people will do a bunch better, mesos, endos, the whole deal, if you guys will swap your desserts out for keto desserts. And especially if you make them yourself. Because here's one of the things we have to recognize that is the odd player out. Seed oils, gluten, glyphosate, processing, all the chemicals we use for that tear the body apart. When you fix metabolic syndrome, that's one of the things you do. You put people on a ketogenic diet, you strip out all the preservatives, and that's how you heal the body back up. But that's one of those big things is that, if you take the normal brownie mix that has flour and, the gluten, the glyphosate, and the sugar and stuff like that, the calorie count's really high. But if you can turn around, you're like, all right, I'm going to use butter and almond flour and erythritol and eggs and that type of thing. The calorie count actually comes down quite a bit, but the chemistry is much, much different. And this is one of those things I keep saying, chemistry over calories, is that when you use things like erythritol, not only is it amazingly beneficial for your heart and blood vessels, but it decreases the glycemic function, and it has no calories. So what ends up happening is that the amount of insulin that your body produces, the hormone that feeds fat cells, decreases. And then your body can process the eggs and the butter and the almond flour and all that stuff really, really well, so you don't have any extra inflammatory issues. You're also missing the gluten and the glyphosate, which causes all sorts of gut damage and inflammation. So your body's going to hold extra fluids and things like that. And then you have all the processing that's in normal, sugary, cakey stuff. So that's what I'm talking about. So when I talk about, hey, even if you're not endos, if you're mesos or mesoecto, if you guys will swap out your chemistry, if you'll start, making some of these things at home, if you'll start changing the way that you're doing these things, so, it'll help a lot. As an endo, the guy who, if their body gets any kind of sugar, it turns it into fat. I have pancakes all the time. I have pizza all the time. I'll usually have pancakes and peanut butter, 4 nights out of the week, it's just one of the things I eat. But they're almond flour, they're egg, there's no sugar in them. And so they still look and taste the same, but they don't have the chemistry. I have brownies all the time. We eat more desserty stuff now on keto than we've ever done before. We make it, but we eat a ton more. And so if you guys will start looking up, the easiest thing to do is to grab, there's a keto cookbook. I think it's called the Ultimate Keto Cookbook. It's desserts, it's white. It's fantastic. You don't have to be in ketosis again to use it. I would recommend that you use more sweetener. I like things sweeter than the book was. And erythritol is my favorite. Monk fruit, erythritol, those type of things are my favorite. Just because erythritol is so unbelievably healthy, good for your heart and blood vessels. And with the COVID issues, everybody needs the extra help with the heart and blood vessel issues. So erythritol is my favorite. Stevia is a great one. Monk fruit's great. If you're going to use different alternative sugars or alternative sweeteners, check the glycemic on them. The maltitol actually has a glycemic index that's a little bit higher than you want. But that's kind of where we're talking about. So, this fat thing's a little bit bigger than just you didn't exercise enough, you didn't stick to the plan enough. That's why you didn't lose the weight. It really does matter what the chemistry in your food and what that chemistry does when it gets inside your body. So, if you're trying to figure out the somatotyping thing, look at the glycemic index, look at, glycemic load, that type of thing. If you're worried about your health, make sure your doctor's pulling your insulin levels because, man, one of the biggest things I see is, people are like, oh, no, they come to me and they feel terrible. Their doctor tells them their labs are normal, but their doctor didn't pull testosterone. They didn't pull, 99% of the time, they don't pull the right thyroid labs to begin with, free T3, free T4, reverse T3. They just pull TSH, which I've talked about a lot. But those things are going to kind of help put everything back where it needs to be. So this Christmas, this Thanksgiving, that type of thing, if you guys are looking for good desserts, really kind of lean into the keto desserts because all you're really changing is the preservatives and the amount of glycemic load or the amount of insulin release from these things. My mom made a keto pecan pie that I swear to God, I cannot tell the difference between this one and a normal pecan pie. It is so good. It is unbelievable. We make cookies all the time. Like I said, we eat a lot more desserts now than ever. My wife makes a 7-layer, we call it a chocolate lasagna. It's basically just layers and layers of different types of chocolate, and it's deliciously amazing. But it doesn't have any sugar in it, and so it doesn't raise your glycemic function at all. So that's kind of what we're talking about when we talk about this type of stuff. If you guys need more help with this, there's a lot of guys out that can do this, not just me. Grab some keto books, read some keto stuff. I make all my guys, when I work with people on this, I make them all read the books because, the more involved you get with your own healthcare, the better results you're going to get. So grab some of those. There's a white one. It's called the Keto Bible on Amazon. It's written by a PhD. I like that one. That'll give you some good information. And so one of the things I want to make sure, because I've talked to people about this before, and they're like, oh, so I don't need my trainer anymore. Man, if you think that your trainer's sole job is to give you a diet plan, you've missed the entire purpose of your trainer. The most important thing that you can do for your health, for anything, is your mindset, is your mental function. Mental function, I'll tell you, is number 1, diet's number 2, hormones number 3. I'll make the argument back and forth on hormones and diet, but mental piece is the most important. And when you have a good trainer, you don't have personal bests anymore. You have team bests. Like that trainer, if he or she's a good trainer, they cannot succeed unless you succeed. They can't win unless you win. Their metrics of how well they're doing are 100% dependent upon you reaching your goals. And so there's a lot of times where you're losing fat and gaining muscle. And guess what happens? If you lose a pound of fat and you gain a pound of muscle, the scale doesn't move at all. It's +1, -1. So it doesn't move. And there's times where you're like, man, am I going anywhere? I don't think this is working. And you need that trainer to step in and go, you're on the path, you're doing fine, stick with it. Consistency is what wins, because we all get in our heads. We're all like, I'm messing up. I'm not doing the right thing. I need to change something because I'm not seeing immediate results. And you need that trainer to be like, no, stay the course. This is a time game. Stay the course. And it's funny because I talk to people that are like, well, I don't think I need a trainer. I work with a lot of professional, top of the line, bikini champions, muscle like the guys on stage who are winning everything. All of them have at least one coach. Most of them have a training coach to lift with, a posing coach to pose with, a diet coach to work on, stuff like that. So they have, the higher you go, the more coaches you get. It's not that, they don't need it because they're on stage and they know everything. So you definitely need one, if you're just trying to lose a little bit of weight and trying to get back in healthy. So, make sure you're using your trainer. A lot of times, the trainer's piece, especially if I'm on my side, we end up being therapists as well, because, life sucks, things hit you in the face, and, you've got to go deal with them. And you show up at the gym and you're pissy, and, you start working out and you start talking about it, and all of a sudden you get done at the end of the day and you're good. So there's a lot of neurology in there as well, but, that's the thing. So lean into your trainers, they're going to really be able to help you kind of get the mental piece, kind of stick with the consistency. And a lot of the times it's just like, 'cause I do weekly check-ins with my guys, it's just accountability. It's like, did you go to the gym? Did you do the things you said you were going to do? Like, that helps out a lot. So stick with your trainers. They're wildly more important than just a diet plan. But, if we'll all start kind of recognizing that this calories in, calories out thing is a part. Calories are a thing. I'm not saying they're not. But the other side of that is, I talk to people all the time and they're like, I'm still fat because I just can't stick to my diet plan. I'm always 100 calories or 150 calories over, and, I just can't get it done. Guys, 100 calories is not going to matter at all. Like, there's a lot of days where, I'll eat 500-600 calories more, or I'll eat, and then my wife will be like, "You want to have ice cream with me?" And I'm like, "All right." And so that's another 500-600 calories that I'll have right there, but it doesn't matter as much because the macro set's where it's supposed to be, and because everything else, the hormones, everything else is set where it's supposed to be. So now, can you eat 1,000, 1,500 calories a day over every day? That's going to be a problem, because it's still chemistry everybody has to deal with. But there's a lot more functionality to this. So a lot of you guys who have been doing the program, have been staying the course, you guys have been eating right, according to your diet plan, you're eating, and you're just not getting the results. Check the glycemic function, because we got to look at insulin hormone. Like, is that where it's supposed to be? Check your testosterone levels, make sure that's where it's supposed to be. And you've heard me go, like, I've made lots and lots of videos going off about how testosterone's not cheating. It's hypercritical to your health to make sure your levels are right. So, get that old 80s George W. Bush, trap out of your head. Recognize it's the most important thing you can add to your body for your overall health. But that's kind of where a lot of this stuff is. So when I talk about it's chemistry over calories, that's what I mean. So if you're lost in the calories thing, look at the glycemic function, look into somatotyping. If you can figure out where you are on the somatotype chart, it's really going to help you kind of figure out what type of chemistry you need to put in your body, or what macro set or what diet you need to put in your body. A lot of you endo-meso guys, which are more endomorphs than mesomorphs, you'll cut your calories, you'll get really, really tight, and you'll lose some weight, and you'll start feeling good, but you don't go where you want to go. And then, you'll do some keto stuff, and you'll be like, oh, this is like, oh, I'm getting all the results. And people are like, well, keto's unsustainable. I've been doing keto for 3 years. It's super easy. It just takes a little bit of effort. Get with somebody who knows what they're doing. The only thing I can't replace is French fries. Like I say, I have pizza. My wife will eat half the pizza, and I'll eat the other half of hers and my whole pizza like once a week. So I have a pizza and a half every week. So you can have pizza. There's all sorts of things you guys can have. The problem is that you're gonna have to make some of this stuff yourself. And that's where the crux of this is. And that's the only time that it's like, okay, well, your laziness is gonna play a factor. And people are like, well, I've got kids and I've got this. Cool. I'll go every week and I'll get a big thing of pulled pork and sausage and brisket, and I'll come home and I'll eat that. And, on Sundays we'll get together and we'll make a bunch of stuff, and we make our pizzas as a family. And so that's really fun. Like my oldest son is actually, he's 11, and the guy makes some of the best steaks I've ever had. He also does really good with his pizzas. These kids can do it. And the great thing is that if you'll spend the time cooking with your kids and learning together, you've just handed your kids a skill that is hypercritical to their health and to their wealth and everything else. Because you can oftentimes make really good, healthy food cheaper than you can buy junk food. So, and that's a big piece of it as well. So, I didn't go very deep on any of this stuff because I wanted to get kind of all the topics, kind of the overview of what's all here. Because we're at almost 20 minutes now, and we didn't go real deep. But if you have more stuff, I've made more videos about this type of stuff. If you guys have more questions, ask. I'm going to start doing more Instagram live things and answer some of these shorter questions. But that's kind of where we're at. So if you guys can start to recognize that, yes, calories are a thing, but the chemistry is more important. What's your somatotype? Where are your hormones? Those type of things, it's really, really important. Sleep's a giant piece of this as well. Methylation's a big piece of this. There's other things, but if you'll figure out your somatotype and your macro set, you'll figure out your hormones and just do those things. You're going to be in a really good place as far as, figuring out more about how your body works and how to manipulate the chemistry to get the results you're looking for. If you guys have any questions, like I said, there's lots of other podcasts I've done on this type of stuff. If you guys want to, hit the office, Pillars of Wellness, chalmerswellness.com. But Dr. Chalmers 1 on all my socials. I don't think that Twitter works very well because after I put out my treatment for COVID, all of my social got crushed. But check out the podcast, and this that'll be probably the easiest way to go. If you guys have any questions at Chalmers Wellness, or put it in the DMs, and we'll get them answered. Thanks.